بحبوا الحياة، بحبوا يعني ما يحبوا مسالمين، ما بحبوا يأذوا، ما بحبوا لو اجت قالت لك انا بدي اجي واشرب قهوة يعني بستقبلها. لو اعطوكم مصاري بترحلوا من الارض؟
لا بنرحش، بنبيعهم هم ولا نبيع
يعني
أرضنا.
بتشتروهم انتوا بتشتروا؟
لا بنبيعهم من قبل في الأرض. احنا ما نروحش من هون غير لما نموت.
This is reminding me my daughters in 1998 how much the damage was there. It's not the house's damage. Damage the heart of the children.
What's your name?
ما ننسى هلا.
Najwa, how old are you?
I am fine, thank you.
How old are you?
I am good.
الواحد بيقدر يرجع يبني بيته أكتر من مرة، بس تكسر قلب طفل زي ما تكسر كاسة إزاز كتير صعب ترجع تبنيه. راح يضل يعاني لسنين طويلة للأبد.
يعني أبي معاشي كمان مصاري. شفنا اليهود وهم طالعين خفنا كتير وحاولنا كلياتنا نجي وندافع عن البرك.
التعب اللي كان جواتنا نفس المشكلة قاعدة بتصير بولادنا. عندي 7 بنات، أنا عندي يعني طلعين مجرد إنها هي قاعدة جنبي بضلها هيك ملزقة فيي. يعني حتى بالليل بتيجي عندي أنا بقوم عليها. هاي الصغيرة يعني لما بيجوا المستوطنين أقسم بالله بتبقى هيك بتنتفض نفضان. صوت المستوطنين، صريخهم، أصواتهم بتسبسب، يعني حتى بتلفظوا في كلام يعني بذيء جدا ما بنحكاش كمان يعني.
أثر على حياتي، يعني تخربطت كل برنامج حياتك تخربط.
فاضل عليك يا أخي
كلنا ما بنقدر.
انت قول له من الفقر، والله من الفقر سوي.
يا الله
لا يا أخي عليهم جبل
كم جربوا في الباقر بينهم 2 جربتين الباقر.
جربتينه باكر؟
احنا لما اجى يهدها كان في واحد اشقر ومتحدث باسم الاداره المدنيه، قال لي برضه اللي من عند الله بديش اعطيك اياه عشان انا بدي اقتل الامل فيك، بدي اقتل احلامك. فاحنا بنستغلها، بنجمعها، بنسوي لها سيول بضل ماشي على البركه. طيب بنستغلها غادي، عصرناها وسويناها عشان نستغلها في الصيف. اللي خساره الميه تروح خساره هيك، اللي نعيش احنا اولادنا منها بس مش اكثر يعني. انهيار عصبي ونفسي منهم. والله انه كان عندي 10 درجات اني من وجع اجري ما بقيت اطلعهم.
يوم 7/10 كان يوم فظيع. من وقتها الجيش وقفوا بيعملوا حالهم انهم بيحمونا.
الحمد لله على كل. بعد ساعة من الاتصال
بعض المستوطنين بلبسوا زي الجنود. الجيش موجودين لا يحموهم. ابن عمي راشد راح على الخليل يشتري أكل لأولاده ال7، وهو راجع على البيت انطخ. ما قالوا لك ولا عن أي سبب ولا عن أي شيء.
فيش اي جيت وقفت على المحصوم طخ علي من غير هذا ولا اي سبب. وانا في السياره طخوا علي على مسافه 0، يعني فيش متر بيني وبينهم. 21/11.
ضخ زي هذا إشي يعتبر عادي، يا دوب يصير اهتمام الصحفيين. One, two, three, four,
وهي واحدة هو
5, 6, 7.
مزعوا بطن السعانة كمان هيك صار.
1, 2, it's about 8 or 9.
طالع
You
كيف.
can see the surgeon in his stomach to get the bullet. المستوطنين قضوا اليوم برموا حجار على بيت امي. وهي عمرها 93 سنة، شافت كل إشي. ايوه ولا تروح حجار يا سيدي. عمية
اجى المستوطنين خالي قال جا مش خبيت الدور.
قولوا لي وين راحت راحت.
كانوا تخبط نوري.
وهذا الحكي احنا نتأمل من الحكومة الحالية أو القادمة إنها تقدم لنا تعاملنا كبشر، لأن الحياة هون بصراحة لا تطاق. فحاولت إني أروح، أنا رحت على جنين.
شو يا سيدي؟ غطاه تروحش على الشاتيل. صار في سبانخ. بعد 7/10 الفلسطينية لحد الآن ما بيقدروا يشتغلوا بإسرائيل. عندي جاري مراد ما عنده شغل ومفلس، فبعطيه أكم من شيكل عشان يساعدني بالأرض. نفس بس 5 دقايق قدك. تعال يا سيدي. شو بدك تدرس يا سيدي؟ دكتور ولا شو بدك تدرس؟ ها؟
بمين بدك تحامي؟ بمين بدك تحامي؟
قضيتنا في هيئة الأمم فاشلة. كل الأمم ما هيش راضية علينا.
ما تبوسن.
بس تجننش جير.
لا لا لحالها عندكم بدها 50 محامي.
يجي طبيخ بيجعلي بعيد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الملك الواحد القهار، بيت المحبة والسلام. For the future, the hope is not stopped, and the dream is not stopped. My land is my paradise and my life. I continue to keep and to stay in it. With peace, with the freedom, with the humanity. That's all what I want. هذه قصة صمودي.
To be a Dalit is to have a life marginalized by Nepal's discriminatory caste system. To be a Dalit woman is to also have a body victimized by higher castes.
We have lived with this violence for so long.
But the Dalit journalist is adamant to realize her dream of women of her caste owning the land they work, securing their safety and that of future generations. Witness Nepal's defiant Dalit journalist on Al Jazeera.
Hello, we've got some rather wintry weather making its way across North America now. Some lively showers, longer spells of rain, some very snowy conditions too coming into central Canada. Two areas of low pressure to keep an eye on here. These ones merging together, driving their way further eastwards. There's that snow mainly into that eastern side of Canada, through Ontario, through Ottawa, pushing across towards the eastern side of the country. Some wetter weather for a time too, just making its way across that eastern side of the US. Some snow there coming in across the Rockies. We push on into Wednesday, and that will continue to drive its way a little further eastwards, turning to rain as it rolls across the Midwest, heading over towards the lakes then. So perhaps some tricky travelling conditions ahead of Thanksgiving, but fine and dry to the east of that, and some drier weather too towards the west and certainly down towards the south. That dry weather stretches down across a good part of Mexico. We've got some wetter weather there into Belize, into Honduras, pushing across into Jamaica for a time. Cuba, Hispaniola, also seeing some lively showers, pushing further east as we go through the next couple of days. We'll see one or two showers too for the eastern islands, but more here in the way of sunshine.
A journey of duty, a journey of faith, and one of necessity. 3 different missions, but all facing the challenge of driving on Nicaragua's unpaved roads, at the mercy of its unpredictable tropical weather. Risking it all. Nicaragua, on Al Jazeera.
When they open the clinic, I think they're primarily expecting people who have insurance.
Now, big grass?
And, you know, that kind of makes sense, except for the fact that Clay is one of the top 5 uninsured counties in Georgia, one of the poorest counties in Georgia, and has the worst health status in Georgia. I couldn't envision at first even being able to stay open here, because I assume they'll take some patients, but I'm going to stay open. I can't abandon my individual patients and knowing that they're not going to get the care that they need. And so I can't leave. You can't just walk away.
Okay. Have a good day now.
Multiple bombings of Lebanon's capital by Israeli forces, despite signs a ceasefire with Hezbollah could be close. I'm Marlene Saeed. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also coming up, a refugee camp is the latest target in Israel's war on Gaza. At least 3 Palestinians are killed. His legal battles are going away. A judge dismisses a case against Donald Trump of plotting to overturn the 2020 U.S. election. Kidnappings at the height of Colombia's civil conflict. Former FARC rebels face their victims at a peace tribunal. There's no let-up in Israel's bombardment of Lebanon's capital, despite indicating it's getting close to a ceasefire deal. Multiple airstrikes hit Beirut's southern suburb of Dahya late on Monday. It's been struck constantly since Israeli attacks on the capital began in September. Israel says it's targeting what it calls Hezbollah facilities and interests in the area. Other southern suburbs of Beirut have also been hit. Earlier, Israeli forces bombed a building in a residential area of Tayyouni. Israel says it struck 25 Hezbollah targets across Lebanon on Monday. Al Jazeera's Zaina Khodr has the latest from Beirut.
More than 48 hours after this attack, a search is continuing for those who are missing. This was one of the biggest Israeli strikes to date on central Beirut. This pile of rubble is all that remains of an 8-story building in one of the most densely populated neighborhoods of the Lebanese capital. Maher is still in shock. He woke up to the sound of the explosions several kilometers away, only to find out that his father and grandmother were among those killed.
My father was still alive when they pulled him out of the rubble. He told the civil defense volunteers before he died to save my brother, who was in another room. Thank God my brother was saved. I don't know why the Israelis did this. They destroyed everything.
The home of Maher's parents is next to a building that, according to Israeli media, was where a high-ranking Hezbollah official was staying. But dozens of people were killed, and the area is considered far from the conflict zones.
Israel's escalation is entering its 3rd month. Every day, its bombing campaign kills more people and destroys more lives. It's already forced 1.2 million Lebanese from their homes.
An end to this war can't come soon enough for a country already struggling with an economic collapse. Every few hours, this happens. Israeli warplanes destroy buildings in Beirut's southern suburb. This may no longer be about degrading Hezbollah's military capabilities, but punishing a population seen by Israel as supporting the group. Most of the time, people are given advance notice to evacuate, but for many, this doesn't change their reality.
I lived through 3 wars, 1982, 2006 and this one. And this is the most difficult war. They're destroying everything. It's a scorched earth policy.
Hezbollah too is negotiating under fire. It has increased its rocket and missile cross-border attacks on Israel, reaching up to Tel Aviv. It's an attempt to restore deterrence. On the ground, its fighters have been slowing down the advance of Israeli troops. The exchange of fire is escalating while there is talk of a possible ceasefire deal. It's not the first time there's been some optimism, but at the same time, there are threats to expand attacks. Zaina Khodr, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
Israel's ambassador to the United Nations says that a ceasefire with Hezbollah is close. Danny Danon told reporters the Israeli cabinet is expected to discuss it soon, but the spokesman for the US State Department is urging caution. Alan Fisher reports now from Washington.
The war between Hezbollah and Israel has been scarring the landscape, claiming lives for more than a year. Buildings destroyed, towns and villages abandoned with thousands displaced and more than 3,000 dead. But there's real hope for the first time since the Israeli invasion in October that some ceasefire deal could be close.
We have made significant progress with getting towards a resolution that includes progress from where we were when I spoke to this last week, but we're not done yet. Nothing is final until everything is final. We continue to work to try and get an agreement over the line, and we're hopeful we can get one, but we need both of the parties to get to yes.
At the United Nations in New York, the Israeli ambassador says the Israeli cabinet will meet in the coming hours and gave a hint of what might be in any deal.
So we are moving forward on this front. As I said many times, our goal was very clear, which is to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. We haven't finalized it, but we are moving forward.
Details aren't official, but it's understood Hezbollah will move its heavy weapons north beyond the Litani River. Israel would withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon, and the Lebanese army would move in to police the area. There would also be a US-led oversight group monitoring implementation and addressing violations. Any initial deal would last 60 days. Lots of positive noises, but we've been here before, not just with Lebanon, but also with Gaza, only for it to fall apart at the last minute. But this time, there seems to be a widespread feeling of guarded optimism. Something Germany's foreign minister reflected at a meeting of G7 foreign ministers.
Together with our partners from the Gulf states and the Arab region, we are currently discussing how we can ensure that at least one of the major challenges in this situation, the situation in Lebanon, is finally brought to a ceasefire.
But it is just one major challenge. The war continues in Gaza with no sign of an end to the fighting, despite previous talks of possible imminent ceasefires. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, at the State Department in Washington.
An Israeli attack on Al-Shati refugee camp in northern Gaza has killed at least 3 people. Artillery fire hit a makeshift building there earlier on Monday. Several other Palestinians were injured. Tariq Abu Azoum has more on the Israeli strikes across northern Gaza.
The situation has been completely apocalyptic. Based on eyewitnesses' report, the Israeli army is still operating in the city of Beit Lahia in the north of the territory, as battles there are on an hourly basis raging between Israeli occupation forces and Hamas operatives. We know that the last series of airstrikes took place was on Beit Lahia, where 1 Palestinian was killed, alongside also in Al-Shati refugee camp, which is in the western coastal line of the Gaza Strip. A cafe was targeted, 3 civilians were confirmed killed amid a very notable expansion of the Israeli military activities on the vicinity also of Kamal Adwan Hospital within the past few hours. The Israeli army as well has passed new evacuation orders for the residents of Beit Lahia town, recommending them to no longer remain in that area because it's going to be an active military war zone. But in the central area, the situation has been relatively calm amid a very remarkable continuation of the Israeli military operation in Rafah city in the far south of the territory, where this operation has been ongoing for almost more than 6 months with no let-up on the ground. Tariq Abu Azoum, Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah, Palestine.
There have been funerals in the occupied West Bank for 2 people, including a teenage boy killed during an Israeli raid. Israeli forces opened fire on several Palestinians during the attack in the village of Yabad on Sunday. The health ministry identified the victims as a 13-year-old boy and a 20-year-old man. Israeli raids across the occupied West Bank are a near daily occurrence in the 14-month war on Gaza.
It's too much. A young boy was killed in cold blood. He didn't have a rocket or a rifle or anything. The boy was resisting the Israeli army with rocks and whatever is available. He was killed in cold blood in this brutal way.
The judge has dismissed the case, accusing Donald Trump of attempting to overturn the 2020 U.S. presidential election. It followed a request by the Justice Department, which has also asked judges to drop the prosecution against Trump for storing classified documents at his Florida home. All this comes ahead of Trump's inauguration as president in January. The special prosecutor, Jack Smith, asked judges to close the cases because Justice Department policy bans the prosecution of a sitting president. Mike Hanna explains.
The special prosecutor made clear that the decision to drop the charges was not because of the merits of the case. It was rather because of a Justice Department resolution that a sitting president cannot be prosecuted for any crimes that he may have committed. So these charges have essentially gone away, confirmed so by the judge. They dealt with the missing documents case, which was being on appeal with an Atlanta court, and of course the attempts to undermine the 2020 election, which was being heard by a federal judge in Washington. The Trump transition has welcomed the decision to drop these charges, and the president-elect himself has issued a statement on social media saying that this has cost the American taxpayer hundreds of thousands of dollars and that the charges were baseless in the first place. There are still a sentencing proceeding facing the president-elect. This is due in a Manhattan court where he's been convicted of fraud charges. The judge in that case has essentially frozen sentencing until the defense can deliver arguments as to why the sentencing should be set aside and indeed the indictment itself removed. There is one other case, and that is a state court in Georgia where the president-elect, along with another number of other defendants, is facing essentially racketeering charges with his alleged attempts to undermine the 2020 election result. In that case, the prosecutor has run into problems of her own. That case is on hold, but now with these decisions being taken all around, very unlikely that the charges in that case would proceed as well. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, West Palm Beach.
I speak now to Dina Saeed-Dole. She's an attorney and legal analyst. She joins us now from Los Angeles. Thank you for your time. Why can't a sitting president be prosecuted for a crime? Why does such a policy exist?
So basically, this policy came about in 1973 when we were dealing with Richard Nixon and his potential crimes. And the idea is that it is too distracting for a president to fulfill his duties as president, as was elected by the people, while simultaneously being a defendant in a criminal prosecution. So that policy is that any indictment or prosecution is supposed to be after he leaves.
There are three demonstrations.
Office.
One of them people are aware of, which is emptying a Tommy gun into the side of the car, a shotgun, 45 and a 9mm, and no penetrations.
Wow.
And it comes that way from the factory.
Can I try it with an arrow?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Absolutely.
There's a challenge.
The strategy
there are three
of delaying,
demonstrations.
And
one of them.
frankly, the delay in Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, appointing a special counsel. He didn't do that, soon after the events of January 2020. He waited quite a long time. And then on top of that, Donald Trump was able to get delays in addition that basically ran out the clock before his election.
In both of his cases against Trump, Smith said he was dropping the charges against the president-elect without prejudice. That's significant, isn't it? I mean, if I understand that correctly, it keeps open the door for charges to be brought against him in the future. How likely do you think that is?
That is a really good question. I mean, that is true technically. Without prejudice, it could be brought again. But now we have the Department of Justice is going to be headed by somebody that Trump appoints. So you have to question, will the evidence be, protected in a way to be able to be used in 4 years' time, as well as the fact that you have statute of limitations that will apply. You have witnesses at this point will be 8 years later. It's always difficult to ever prosecute case after so many years. Plus, it's possible that Donald Trump himself might try to pardon himself as he leaves office. So although technically the way Jack Smith dismissed the case, it could be brought again, we have entered into the realm of it being very unlikely that he will face these charges even in 4 years' time.
OK, Dina, thank you for your time. Dina Saeed-Dole, attorney and legal analyst, speaking to us there from Los Angeles.
Thanks for having me.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera, a march with extra meaning, a plea to the president of Mexico's rally against the killing of women. And a group of miners resurfaces in South Africa. They say others left underground are dying of hunger.
Discover a world of difference. Stories of diversity, rebellion, corruption, and compassion. Al Jazeera World. A selection of the best films from across our network of channels. On Al Jazeera.
Being a journalist is a privilege. I get to the heart of the story, amplify the voices of those who have been drowned out by the noises of war. It's my driving force. It's what pushes me to take risks. You're just gonna try to take a safer position. Digging deep, trying to find the gritty truth. It's a challenge and a huge responsibility. We keep politicians and decision makers in check, show the devastating human cost of their decisions. Working at Al Jazeera enables me to make the other voices relevant, to show that there's more that unites us than divides us.
Watching Al Jazeera, reminder for our top stories this hour. Multiple airstrikes have hit southern Beirut. Israeli forces say they struck 25 Hezbollah targets across Lebanon on Monday. Attacks continue despite reports suggesting both sides are closing in on a possible ceasefire deal. At least 3 people have been killed in an Israeli attack on Al-Shati refugee camp. Artillery fire hit a makeshift building there earlier on Monday. It's one of several Israeli attacks across northern Gaza. A judge in the U.S. has dismissed the case in which President-elect Donald Trump was accused of attempting to overturn the 2020 election, followed a request by the Justice Department, which has also asked judges to drop the case where Trump's been accused of retaining classified documents. Colombia has held a peace tribunal where, for the first time, former FARC rebels took responsibility for some of the group's actions during the civil war. The hearing is taking place on the 8th anniversary of the peace deal between the state and the FARC. Alessandra Rampietti reports from Bogota on how achieving lasting peace remains in doubt.
7 regional commanders of former FARC rebels in Colombia faced their victims for the first time on Monday. It was part of a public hearing of Colombia's peace tribunal, where the guerrilla group accepted responsibility and asked for forgiveness in the kidnappings of hundreds of people in the country's southwest at the height of Colombia's long civil conflict.
The chaining, the confinement, the violence with which we prevented their movement, the damage to their families. We deprived them of seeing their children grow old.
The tribunal described in great detail how for years the FARC leadership ordered the abductions of military officials, politicians and regular people as part of their war on the state. The most famous, the kidnapping of 12 deputies of the Valle Regional Assembly in Cali in 2002 to pressure a prisoners' exchange between the group and the government. In the end, 11 deputies were executed. But the majority of the group's hostages were regular Colombians who didn't have the means to pay the ransom, like Henry Sanchez's father, who was killed in captivity in 1994.
It was horribly hard to find his body in the middle of a mountain, 4 years after his abduction, shot at close range and likely tortured with a knife.
The hearings coincided with the 8th anniversary of the historic peace deal between the FARC rebels and the Colombian state. And while some are celebrating the country's attempts at reconciliation, many are criticizing the delays in the peace tribunal sentencing and the lack of implementation of the many reforms agreed to in the accord. In a commemoration in the capital Bogotá, the current government recognized the state has so far failed to bring real change to remote areas of the country, where dissident groups of the former rebels continue to operate. But the United Nations mission overseeing peace implementation says there's still hope.
In Colombia, you are writing a different story, one of expanding peace and inclusion. Comprehensive and lasting peace, while still in the works, remains within your reach.
A bittersweet anniversary for an historic deal that is still waiting to fulfill its promises in a country struggling to leave its bloody history behind. Alessandro Ampietti, Al Jazeera, Bogotá.
Hundreds of people are rallying in Mexico City to protest against the many women who disappear or are killed every day. The UN says up to 10 women are killed on a daily basis in Mexico. Julia Galliano has more.
This march takes place every year in Mexico, but this is the first time that it happens with a woman sitting in the presidential palace. But women rights advocates don't expect Claudia Sheinbaum's presidency to bring a quick fix to decades of growing violence against women. Instead, they're waiting for her to take some concrete steps to effect real change on the issue, specifically the near total impunity associated with femicides in Mexico.
The president should make changes without us having to demand it. Her campaign slogan was, "I didn't get here alone, all Mexican women made it with me." But that's not the case. She and her people made it to the presidency, but not all women can be there because so many have been killed along the way. But she should at least meet with us.
President Sheinbaum announced this morning a series of steps aimed at bringing visibility to gender-based violence in the country.
No es normal. Es violencia.
The measures include a media campaign, educational programs for young children, and training for city officials, police, and prosecutors. Julia Galliano, Al Jazeera, Mexico City.
Protesters in Kenya demanding an end to violence against women and girls have come under fire themselves from police. Catherine Soy reports.
These women are protesting against the killing of women and girls in